We worked in 6 municipalities and 4 South African provinces. So that's a little bit of my background in terms of where I'm coming from. And I also feel like I'm coming home because I broke my, what's it called?
The slide is
you
too
can
much.
move. Yeah, I think they can.
Maybe we can put this off.
Yeah, it's too much light.
Just close the shutter.
The shot.
Oh, yeah. Thanks.
Okay, so before I introduce the panel formally, I would like us all to... Okay, take a deep breath in through your nose. Close the eyes. Take a deep breath out through the nose. Let it out. Take a deep breath in again. Let it swirl around. Get it to all those cobwebby areas. Help the food to digest and let it out. Don't fall over.
Negative. Yeah. But if you can influence, then you have the power.
I think that's a challenge that most of our citizens are facing, participating in influencing power.
They are not empowered to influence the citizens.
Yes.
And I think that's how some may come from getting
expertise, yes. Those who have expertise share with those who have no information and help them to participate in influence.
Yeah, all I think of is power is the political power, the political space that we have. Because I'm used to I think it's a culture that we allow those powerful people to make it. And we think that the power vests in them rather than us having the power even to remove them from office.
We are the ones who need the power to put them in those offices by voting for them.
So we have the power.
We have the power, but we are not.
And they are whatever.
Yeah.
So
some of the issues I'm trying to raise the issues that were raised earlier in the discussion, the mistrust.
Yes, that is rampant in the country because if you're coming from the civil society, the government will not listen to you.
Yeah, it's true.
Government will not listen. So most of the civil society organizations now are coming through our office, the parliament budget, so that if you want to put across the government, they are not given the audience. If we do it, interesting.
Once you can hear my voice.
I don't. But
my energy up. There was lots of laughter, which is always a good thing. And so this panel discussion we're going to have this afternoon is to really look at the wider political space in which we do the work that we do in terms of our social accountability monitoring advocacy. Okay. Is that good? Okay. And so here we're really looking at the policy we do and the political environment in which we are working. Is that better? Yeah. Sitting in different spaces and areas. I'd like to introduce to my immediate some of the experiences around power and extractives, both in terms of the public, private, and government. To her left, we have Pepkwa Chibore, am I saying it correctly? Is currently employed as a senior analyst at the Macro 16, and is the founding deputy director and acting director of the technical support unit to the Parliament and its committees. So before joining Parliament, he worked as a policy analyst with the National Economic Consultative Forum, a public-private organization bringing diverse stakeholders together to talk about the formulation and implementation of socio-economic policy. To his left, we have Mr. Mbangwana Mapoko, who has been working for 20 years in the international development with UN agencies like UNHCR and WFP, as well as working for international NGOs like We Effect, formerly known as the Swedish Cooperative Center. And he's based in Mozambique, lessons that have come out. And then to his left, we have Honorable Zito Kabwe, who served as a legislator in Tanzania since 2005, and he chairs the Public Investment Account Committee, and later the Public Account Crusader in terms of holding government leaders to account, and is credited for inspiring young Tanzanians to join politics, and has championed transparency of natural resources and curbing illicit financial flows. So again, we have another lens in terms of what kinds of experience and engagements have we had both within the issue, for example, extractors or whatever you would like to touch on. And if you've had any insights into how the challenges faced, kind of how can we think about power in the work that we do when we are trying to navigate the entire accountability cycle to get services delivered.
Important documents. We also work around issues of monitoring public service delivery to ensure that government is doing the right thing. And so responding to your question on how we've addressed some of the issues of power in the extractive sector, I think I want to mention that making decisions on behalf of the citizens, and sometimes, most of the times, the citizens are not aware. Sometimes they wake up in the morning and there's a government pronouncement to say this is what we're going to do, and they are not just there. So when we go to the extractive sector, the issue that you raised, I think we've had a lot of challenges where host mining communities are negatively being impacted by the decisions that are made by the mining companies. We've had a situation, a good example I can give is one of the communities called the Kalumbila in northwestern part of Zambia, where a mining company, they mine for use at their mine, and in drawing that water, it meant that they were going to put up huge pipes. It's quite a long distance from the dam to the mine. So that means that they were going to block one of the access roads that is used by the community members. And this is an area that has been given about issues of their rights and extractives, the negative impacts of mining. So the community members realized that they were going to be affected because that's an access road that they've been used to access various social amenities like health, education. It was going to impact negatively on them, the school children. It meant that the people were going to be, the government has given us this land, and we are going to do what, because we need water in the mine. And we have to put this, you have to be rerouted. They proposed that they were going to provide a bus for the children to be taken to school. But what about the pregnant women, those who are going to go into the forest? They were not going to do anything. They were going to go ahead with their plans. So they approached the civil society organizations, tried to speak to them. There was no issue. So there was no solution. So the civil society organization had to take an upper arm and take up this issue, mobilize civil society organization leaders sat with the minister and explained the situation to them with some of the community representatives from the community. And when the minister was told, he said actually he was not aware that such a thing was happening. This was an issue of decision. We're talking, called the mine, the manager at the mine, and he explained to them these are the issues that I've received. And he gave an instruction to say, you either have to bury those pipes or you have to put them overhead. Find a way, because these are our voters. Put a road over the pipes. And they had done a very good construction, and we feel that that was a success for the community members. It was an issue of power. If they had not taken it up, if they had not used the right steps, I think about the fact that social accountability is about issues of answerability, managing the consequences, and so on and so forth. However, like I mentioned, negotiating of power or navigating power has not really been easy, because we are working in a context where civil society state the liberation struggle, trying to get power from our colonial master. The perception of CSOs has not fundamentally changed, even earlier in the morning, and that has remained the situation even today. Partly also happened in the extractive advocacy in the extractive sector. I think back home, after the privatization, we had a lot of foreign investments contributed to a situation where there was that just gap the citizens. We have a situation where we have fragmentation. I think this issue came up. Fragmentation among CSOs, which makes power navigate citizens on issues of human rights. Sometimes we have a tendency as civil society to say we are speaking on behalf, I think this issue came up even earlier, we're speaking on behalf to enhance human rights awareness among the citizens. And you just be there. Government will be saying, okay, we are this year we are getting, and because a citizen knows the obligate act in Zambia, unlike other countries that have that, because I believe that for citizens to effectively navigate power, to participate in decision making, they need to have access to the right information. But it's so the issue of the way government or extractive companies package the information, it's so technical that ordinary citizens are not able to relate, to understand. So that's one of the challenges. They cannot negotiate for what they want. High literacy that are called or organized by civil society organizations, where after civil society organizations monitor public service delivery by the government. And these are opportunities that we can take advantage of, because we call these public government officers to sit with the community, where those are some of the opportunities. We have budget submissions where Parliament invites us to make submissions to influence decisions of these citizens, because it is through the civil society that this citizens. And we have consultation meetings that stage of to make decisions that we need. There are factors that need political will for adequate. We need adequate political will for social accountability. We also need an accessible government with mechanisms that ensure accountability, and they must be operational. But there's also need for trust. The issue of trust has been coming up between civil society and the government. Good rapport as civil society with the government. Being confrontational, we interact with the government, at the same time building the capacity of these citizens to understand their rights and be able to raise the issues because government needs to hear the voices from everywhere throughout the country. I think as civil society, we are yet to reach a stage where we've created that critical mass of being voted by the people, but whom are you representing? And this is because they feel sometimes we'll be raising issues on behalf of the people, and yet these ordinary citizens do not even understand the issues sometimes that we are raising on their behalf, because we have not created awareness. So it's important that we create awareness if people have to engage and demand for participation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So just in terms, you've touched on some very interesting that ended up placing power in the right hands to get what they needed, which was a better arrangement between themselves and the mining company. So thank you very much. And so now, Pekpai, what I'd like to turn our attention to is to go a little bit inwards in terms of from kind of the big P, the
Parliament Budget Office. I work with the parliamentarians, I work with politicians, and Parliament has the highest concentration of political power, so I work with politicians, and you'll find that the social accountability work in Parliament is affected by issues like political party discipline, where some members of Parliament may vote along political party discipline, etc. Usually the outcomes preferred by a dominant political party usually turn out to be power. How we can define power. Power, I define power as the ability to influence, and also the ability to make policies that are binding on every citizen. So even the ability to influence is power. And I also looked at the sources of power. Information is a source of power, legislation is a source of power, expertise is a source of power, legitimacy is a source of power. They recommended the trinity of A's, that is ability, attitude, and authority. So they said these three are not mutually exclusive, but they are mutually reinforcing. Yes. Starting with authority. Authority is that legal backing. But once you, by the social accountability monitors or the practitioners to act in a certain way which promotes social accountability, you find we are working in a politically polarized environment which makes engagement, especially between the demand side and the supply side, very difficult. Coming from Zimbabwe, any civil society issues of governance, society model, achieve that. Then we see how we can handle those petitions from there. So those are some of the areas that or some of the mechanisms that we've used to try to navigate power, especially considering that we are working with very powerful people who possess that political power decisions on the people.
Thank you very much. Confronted issue.
Thank you very much. As an introduction, my name is Mbwanga Makoko. I'm from Mozambique and working for Municipal Social Accountability Program. The Municipal Social Accountability Program is working in the municipality area, and in this perspective, demonstrate achieve to empower them with public officials of the municipalities and members of municipality. In this planning process, especially talking about meeting and SAMUCOM with the, for example, public official, formed.
For you to close us.
Understand from parliamentary perspective, not from the civil society perspective, the accountability cycle, because it's Parliament that approves money for the government to spend in various items, including the of education, independent of the police. So one,
to
concerning as a chairperson of the Public Accounts Committee to take to task fellow politicians. I think you have just mentioned that it's a sticky issue, but you have not given a guidance, because as a staff member working with Parliament, we have, for example, I'll give a very procured tractors. In a year, the tractors were not used for the intended purposes and they were sold out. And a lot of the people who benefited from those tractors are politicians, members of Parliament, ministers, including part of the speakership. Every time as a secretariat you put that for a while.
Thank you. Once again, my name is Barwani Mshala from Twaweza, Tanzania. The question I have is about loss of, and now we have to be confrontational. So perhaps that is a question we can explore a little bit. It's good that are we confrontational?
Great. Thank you. And then last question for this round, which was really, how do you
make them more finance, public audit to the...
I'd like to hear.
Parliament should involve the citizens in all its legislative processes, including the budget. So during the drafting stage, usually the finance committee goes out to the public to consult on what they want to see included in the budget. And we have also made a deliberate. So from
why?
Hakelimu adverts. They're simple questions. And then the government reacted by banning Hakelimu. Recently, Barwani's office, they have been in trouble, doing nothing. They just raised, they conducted survey.
For a second round, because it's tea time, I got caught up. Didn't realize it's 2:45, not 1:30. So please grab the panelists. I know there were hands up. Please grab the panelists over tea and ask the questions. We are also breaking up into smaller groups.